Remember correctly, we had a parade through the Colmar area. Oh, and one of the things, the soldiers didn't hesitate to go into warehouses and liberate things. And I ended up with a great big, I'll call it a rabbit or sheep, no, it was sheepskin coat. Great big thing, big bulky thing. And I also ended up with a rabbit fur vest. Well, I wore that vest. I don't think I ever wore the big sheepskin coat. I brought it home, but I wore that rabbit skin vest all the time because I kept warm in it. Because when we were going up to Colmar, we were going through snow, and we would come to an intersection or someplace where the traffic was going in both directions. We'd just be sitting beside the road for quite a while. You'd look out into the field, and the German folks were out there, and they had these great big piles alongside their fields. They must have been about, I'll just say, 3 or 4 feet tall, maybe 5 or 6 feet wide at the base, and maybe 10, 15, 20 feet long. And they would have squash and other vegetables from their fields during their harvest, and they would pack them out there with straw in between them and then cover the whole thing up with mud or dirt. And then they would just uncover sections of it, and take the food out, and saw them working in that kind of an area while we were going up to the area that we were going to be in. Anyway, we left the Colmar area. So as you can imagine, being mobile, we did not just go in a straight line any place. We would go up, down, sideways. We ended back up at in the Trier. Well, if I remember correctly, the town of Trier was the first town that I remember what they called the Screaming Mimes. These were an artillery shell that the Germans would shoot, and it had a whistle sound, and you knew it was coming. And then, of course, whenever it hit, it made a big noise and ruined everything. And, of course, being a messenger, I would be moving in and out of whatever area I was. And I can remember being in a German schoolhouse for a period of time. So I brought home one of the stamps that they would stamp on their things that had the German eagle spread out on it, and was about the size of a silver dollar as far as the rubber stamp was concerned. And this is just an aside, but my daughter took it to high school back in let's just say in the 70s. And they were studying, Germany and so forth. And the classroom teacher stamped one of the girls in the class's absence card with his stamp. And she was Jewish. And oh boy, did he ever hear about it from the parents. This was stamped with this Nazi symbol on it. Anyway, we were around the Stuttgart area and Trier, and then we moved, then we started moving up, and roughly in March, let me see if I have the date down here. Yes, sometime in early March. Now this is my remembrance. We covered all of the markings on our half-tracks and tanks with grease to cover up the markings, so that as we were traveling night and day, and we left the area of the 7th Army under General Patch and we crossed a very small corner of Luxembourg and moved into the 3rd Army area with General Patton. And for 2 weeks we were called the Mystery Division. That's how the 12th Armored Division got its name, the Mystery Division, because our markings were all covered up because they didn't want the German intelligence to know that Patton had received another armored division. And we were one of the spearhead divisions for Patton for that 2 weeks for the dash to the Rhine. So we ended up in an area somewhere around, I'll just say, Ludwigshafen, and we got to the banks of the river. And I can remember after the combat and all that kind of stuff, I just walked around one afternoon looking. I could pick up all kinds of souvenirs, rifles, whatever you want to imagine, just off the ground. I picked up a flare gun with some ammunition and stuff like that. I would put it in the half-track. And then on about March 23rd, somewhere's around them. March 28th in the morning, we crossed over the Rhine River. Oh, it was just beginning to be daylight on a pontoon-type bridge that the engineers had placed across the Rhine. And of course, being able to cross on a bridge like that, you knew that the other side was already safe. So we crossed the bridge at that time, and when we crossed over, then we went further inland, and approximately at that time, then we returned to the 7th Army under General Patch. So we were only with General Patton for approximately 2 weeks. Then we were heading, in a sense, towards Wurzburg, and we were cleaning out the towns and things along that way. And the most memorable thing in my whole memory was the day before Easter. This was a Saturday. We entered a town called Hettstadt. Took the town. Maybe we might have even gone in there on a Friday. And the Germans counterattacked with about 8 Tiger tanks with these 8mm guns and chased us out of the town. So this was roughly on a Saturday, we'll say. So on Sunday afternoon, April 1st, 1945, Easter Sunday, we prepared to go back in and take the town. I was with the captain, having the radio on the back, and we were beginning to re-enter the town of Hettstadt and receiving sniper, grenade, and small arms fire. Very, very little, but mean enough that one of our men in the company had a bullet go through his helmet, through the liner, and made a furrow right through his scalp, and the bullet went out the back. So the men were on the ground. We had tank support, but this is the sad part. The tankers would put one of these very illuminated reddish or orange, according to whatever the code was going to be, on their tanks to show that they were friendly. And unfortunately, American planes did strafe some of our planes. But this friend of mine that was in the tank corps on that day, he was in the light tanks, and the tank was hit by German fire and put out of action, and he was killed on that day. But here was Company C, what was left of it, because at least 30 men were either still in the town or captured. And of course we had casualties on when the tanks came back in. So we were at least 30 men light. So that was quite a bit. But we went into the town, and all of a sudden we were stopped, and the captain says, "We've got to get moving." He would shout us some commands, but nothing was happening. He says, "Well, let's go." I put down the captain's radio, and I started going into the town, running, zigzagging, dropping down to the ground, so forth. And I got in, I went past the men, and, if I remember correctly, I probably was yelling at them, let's go, let's go. And I got in front of them, thinking that they were, perhaps following me, but they weren't. All of a sudden, I felt a smack on my hip and liquid. A sniper had hit my canteen, and it was the water that had flooded down the side of my pants. Anyway, I kept going, and I was now in an area of buildings, and I couldn't see where the sniper was. I tried a couple of doors to see if I should go up and maybe try to flush him out, but didn't see anything. I had wire clippers that I carried. I was, as you kind of mechanically inclined. I was taking an industrial education course to be a shop teacher when I was at Santa Barbara. So I just cut wire fences open and wormed underneath them, and I went into town in between the buildings, not down the streets. I got down into the town because it was kind of on a little hillside going down into town. And I looked all around the town, back and forth, saw no tanks, saw no organized resistance. So I just got over to the street and sidewalk and walked back out to where the company was and waved them on in. Anyway, as they came in, I always carried my camera right in my pocket. I just took my camera out and turned around and took a shot of the men and everybody coming into the town, and that's one of the pictures that Dr. Williams has. And anyway, we took the town, retook it. I know that there were some German soldiers left in the town that had what they call the Wirbelwerfer or something like that, which was the equivalent of our bazooka. And I know that some of our men shot them and got the town cleared. There was very little resistance on that Sunday afternoon. And I can remember being in the house that evening. I had sent for a carbide lantern. Do you know what a carbide lantern is? You put little grains of chemical, and you let water drip on them, and they generate acetylene gas. And then you light the flame, and it's got a little reflector on it, and you have light. And I had sent for one of these, and my folks had sent it to me, and that was the first, I think it was one of the first nights that I had that, and remember reading something or writing letters. I think I was up in the attic of a house at that time. Anyway, we kept on going, and that's about when we turned from that General Wurzburg area and then started heading, if you want to say, kind of south, heading towards Munich. And we would go maybe 25, 35 miles in a day, almost as fast as the tanks could keep up with us. And as I said before, I was a Christian at the time, and I can remember traveling along in the half-track. And if you sat in the seats of the half-track, you had quarter-inch thick armor plate, only about up to the top of your neck. And then your helmet and everything stuck over that unless you scrunched down, and it was all canvas above that. And here we were going along the highway, whatever speed we could, and going past these hills and everything. And I was thinking to myself, we could be ambushed any place along here. And I just thought of that time, and I've said this several times before to other people. I just thought of that old hymn, God will take care of you. Excuse me. Anyway, he did. And we would only hit, we didn't have much in the way of combat. Once in a while, we would hit heavy resistance, and we had men killed. This was in April, and anyway, we went all the way down, and we bypassed Munich because the foot troops would take the big towns, and we were on our way towards the Brenner Pass, and about May 2nd or 3rd, they said, stop, don't go any further. And of course, the war ended approximately May 8th for the European battle. Well, we pulled back, and C Company was stationed in the Ellwagen area, and I think the headquarters was Dinkelsbühl. Well, they no longer had any use for battalion runners, so I was with this half-track of the captains, and the only person that I remember, the only person that I really remember, you know, all during this time is Weston L. Emery. He's the one that wrote the book C-66. Now, he and I had a lot of fun during the occupation. We traded cigarettes for lumber and stuff, and we built a high bar and some low parallel bars, and we did workouts and things of that sort. There wasn't anything else to do, you know, and that's really the only time that I really got to know Weston, because when we were in the States here at Abilene, I wasn't in the captain's half-track. I was with a machine gun squad, and anyway, he was the only one that I really remember. And when I was here in Abilene, I had left the first or second, well, maybe during the first week, I had gone over to the Ordnance Battalion to ask the captain, or one of the officers there, if I couldn't be transferred from C-66 into the Ordnance, because all of the time that I was at Santa Barbara State College, I worked in an automotive repair shop where we rebuilt engines and did car work and all that. And I thought that I had a lot to offer to the Ordnance. Well, they said, well, they were full, and so I never got. But after the war, and I only had 54 points, which was how many you would gain by number of months in the service and your awards and all that kind of stuff. I only had 54 points, so that wasn't enough to go home. But they sent the 12th Armored Division home, as far as paperwork was concerned, with all of the men that had high points, and that your age depended upon it and everything else. And so a lot of the men were leaving the Ordnance Division, and I received a pass, about a 5-day pass, to go to Paris, France. The sergeant would come out at our morning roll call, and he'd say, well, I've got passes for England, I've got passes for France, I've got this, I've got that. Hey, I love to do things like that, so I got a pass to Paris, France. And I was in Paris 1 year after D-Day on June 6th. And they made a big deal out of this. They gave me a vial of Chanel perfume. They gave me a little booklet that I've since given to Dr. Williams, all about Paris and France and things of that sort. If I remember correctly, you could go into the Red Cross centers, and for 25 or 35 cents you could buy your meals. And I had a lot of money because, as I said, I sold cigarettes besides the GI money that we have, and I still have some of the GI money at home in my little showcase place with my dog tags and my Army glasses that would fit into you had to have special glasses that would fit into a gas mask. You couldn't have just, the glasses that you and I are wearing are too large for a person to wear when you have a gas mask on. So we all had these little tiny round glasses that we wore. Probably looked very, very funny. But anyway. So I was there and went all over Paris and, you know, shot pictures of the Eiffel Tower and Napoleon's tomb and the whole bit, and rode in the carriages and went to the nightclubs and did all kinds of stuff, and up to the great big white church called Mount Sacre something or another, and anyway, that was very interesting. When I came back from my Paris leave, they transferred me to the service company of 66. But I must have only been in there for about a week. And in the meantime, one of the ordnance officers happened to be talking to one of the infantrymen and said that he knew that I was interested in going into ordnance. So they transferred me to Company B of the 134th Ordnance Battalion. So all during the summer of occupation, whereas Weston Emery was still at C Company headquarters, 66, and later on went home supposedly to go through the U.S. and then go overseas again, to the South Pacific. I was in the occupation area working on half-tracks, jeeps, tanks, scout cars, whatever happened. We were stationed along the Danube area. I can remember that very clearly because the Danube was not blue. It's very definitely a muddy brown color. And of course we were stationed in homes. And one of the things I can remember is that every day at lunchtime, of course we had Armed Forces radio. They played all of the swing tunes, all of the 30s and 40s tunes that you probably never heard except when you go to these reunions. And we had good chow, and maybe once or twice a week they'd have ice cream, they'd make it in the town, and we would begin to receive the Stars and Stripes newspapers. I know that I had at one time the Volume 1, Number 1 of the Southern German Stars and Stripes, saying that the war was over and everything. And I think since then that I've sent that on to the Carlisle Barracks in PA. If the museum here had been active at that time, or ACU, I would have given all of that material to them. But this was several years before the university was active in that area. Anyway. In July of we're now in 1945, July 10th, I was awarded the Silver Star Medal. That was from the General Order number 69, and for my action and duty in April 1st in the Hetstad area when I went into the town ahead of the company. And so that was when I was officially received the order on paper. And on July the 16th, I actually received the Silver Star Medal pinned on me at the evening retreat. Now, of course, I was now in the Ordnance, and there is a picture here at the museum in the Ordnance Division of me receiving the order being read, and I'm standing there at attention, receiving, and of course I do have the other pictures of I think it was the major, one of the probably ordnance majors, pinning the medal on me, and then of course I have pictures of the medal on my uniform. So I received that medal, which gave me another 5 points, which didn't mean any difference. Oh, we just kept on working on the tanks and the trucks during the occupation. And at that time, they didn't have the occupation medal. Years later, I rode in after I was discharged, and I received the occupation medal, and it has a little kind of bar on it that says Germany. So I have that medal at home also. We would, as I say, continue working on the trucks and everything, and then somewheres during the fall of 45, everything in the 12th Armored Division was transferred over to the 2nd Armored Division. So you could have the 12th Armored Division on one shoulder of your uniform, but you would have the 2nd Armored Division patch on the shoulder of the other arm. And during this period of time, all during combat, I was a PFC. And when I started working on the trucks and with the Ordnance Battalion having many of its regular men leaving because they had the points, they had the ratings were now open, and I received a T5. That's the 2 stripes with the T underneath it. That's same as the corporal rating. I don't know, maybe it was an extra $5 or $10 a month. When I had the combat infantry badge, which I received on December 31st, I have the paperwork that I received the combat infantry badge. I think I got $10 a month more for having the combat infantry badge. And you know, we had war bonds taken out of our salary, and I even think I sent an allotment home that my mother put in the bank probably, and we didn't receive actual cash, maybe $25, $35 a month, actual cash. So anyway, we're now in the 2nd Armored Division, and all of a sudden we were transferred over to Marseille. We stayed in Marseille during December. There was a big, huge staging area for waiting for the transport home. And we got a couple of days pass to go to Nice on the Riviera. And they took us in a truck. And maybe I want to backtrack here for a minute. When I was still with the C-66 in summer, the first part of the summer, the 12th Armored Division football team was going to play, I'll say, the 102nd Airborne Division in Berlin. A 7-hour truck ride if you wanted to go watch the football team. I didn't want to ride 7 hours in a truck, but a lot of the guys did. They wanted to see the football game. I sent 10 cartons of cigarettes with this fella, and he was going to sell them on the black market for a 10% commission. I got $80 a carton for those cigarettes. But you know what? Some of the money was counterfeit. But anyway, I was able to have that money, and during the summertime there in the fall, I took a pass to Switzerland. I think it was about a 9-day pass. And they trucked us to the city outside of the border, and then we got on the trains and went into Basel, Switzerland. And you had a choice of about 5 different tours through Switzerland. I took the tour that went through Bern, Lucerne, and Geneva, and then back to Basel. And we traveled on the Swiss trains. They were electric. Very clean. Switzerland is a very clean town. All of their streetcars and everything, you know, just in comparison to the steam engines that in France and everything, you know, they belched out smoke and coal dust and everything, and they were dirty. And as soon as we got into Switzerland, everything was clean. Now my grandparents, William and Dorothea Hahn, lived in the Basel area at one time, and my father's 2 half-sisters were born. One of them was born in Basel, and one was born evidently at that period of time in the late 1800s. Families would move. Sometimes they'd be in Switzerland, sometimes they would be in Germany, and one of my aunts was born in Germany. Well, anyway, I had the address of where they had lived in Basel. So in Switzerland, now this is in 45, if you lived near France, the kids in Switzerland learned French, the Swiss language, and English. So it was easy to get around in Switzerland. So I found out from somebody and got on a streetcar and went to this location where they lived, knocked on the door. Little kid came there, you know, and he didn't speak English, but he went and got Grandma. Grandma spoke English, and oh, she was so happy to see me and all this and that. And I told him, you know, that my grandma and two aunts had lived there. And so she took the information down and all this and that. And of course, that was my first time at their home, and invited in and had tea and cakes and things of that sort. They're very hospitable. And then I went on the rest of my tour and went through all of the different towns, and very, very interesting, you know. Oh, another thing. When we went into Switzerland, they would only exchange $40 into Swiss money because they knew that the GIs were loaded, and they wouldn't let you spend $200 or $300, $400 because you'd buy the state out. So we only had $40, but when I was changing my money, these are, of course, humorous aside, sort of, the group that was coming back from Switzerland happened to hit a holiday, a one-day holiday, and the stores were closed. And these guys still had Swiss francs on them. So we went up and down the lines and bought their leftover Swiss francs. And, you know, an officer charged me, I think, two for one, you know. But I had plenty of money, so I had more than $40 when I went into Switzerland. And you'd go into the department stores, and I brought home a very nice music box, which I sent to my folks, played 4 tunes on it. And I bought dolls, sent dolls to my sister, and handkerchiefs and kerchiefs and all kinds of stuff, you know. I bought a watch for my future girlfriend, because when I went overseas, I had a girlfriend in Houston, but that's all. I didn't have anybody in California at all. I didn't date at all. Well, I went to a few dances in Santa Barbara, but I wasn't that kind of a guy. Anyway, so I bought this very nice watch. You know, in those days they went by jewels. This was 17 jewel watch, and I just carried that with me all the way, you know, around, and whatever I bought. And I just leave the hotel and I just tramp all over town and do this and do that, you know, and take pictures of this. My folks would send me color film. So I have color film of several of the locations. In fact, I took several pictures when I was in Geneva of the League of Nations buildings and places like that. So then we entered in Basel and we left at Basel. But when we got back to Basel, I went back to the home, and Grandma had gone to the city hall, and she had got the birth certificates of my aunt that was born in Switzerland and the information then. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but back in those days, if a family moved from one town to another, you had to get official permission to leave the town and things of that sort. So you just didn't get up and leave like we do nowadays, you know. So anyway, I went back to the company. Probably rode trains and trucks to get back to the company. And this was probably now in 2nd Armored Division. The sergeant would come out at roll call every morning and says, anybody want to go to Luxembourg, to Paris, to England? And these guys didn't want to go anyplace. So I signed up to go to Luxembourg in Belgium. No, not Luxembourg, but Belgium, in that area. I changed my money to francs, and one of the officers said, you've been going too often. You can't go. We need you for guard duty. So I never did go into the Belgium area. And whether I stayed guard duty or not, I don't know, but very strange. And, I took these pictures, you know, all during combat and everything, and bought some chemicals at the drugstore. I had done a little bit of photography work at home, and went upstairs in the home we were staying at and made a little dark room and developed some of my film, and of course I couldn't develop the color film, but I did some of that work while I was there. Anyway, during the summertime with the second, while I was with, no, I was still with the 134th, they offered a 3-day trip through a 3-day truck trip. They had a bunch of seats on that they put on a truck, and we went to the area Innsbruck, the Brenner Pass. I hiked up from Innsbruck to a big sign that said you are now entering Italy in the Brenner Pass, and there was a little rail car that you could leave Innsbruck, and as a soldier you could get on these things free, and they would take you up the mountain to where the snow was, and I got put on some skis and snowed down the Alps there and the Brenner Pass area. And one of the things that this 3-day trip took, we stopped at the concentration camp that the 12th Armored Division had liberated. But of course, now this is in the middle of summer, and it was all sanitized. You could see the holes in the ground where the Jewish prisoners lived. They were about, I'll just say about 3 or 4 foot deep, and they must have had canvas or something over the top. And then you could see the plumbing and stuff. There's some pictures of, I think it's even my picture that shows the guys walking past the plumbing and stuff that had all been burned up. There's pictures of somebody took pictures when they did burn it, and but it didn't really have any impact on me because we just were there for about an hour, and we walked around the compound, and basically we ate K rations. You know, we would stop someplace and have K rations for breakfast and lunch and dinner. You know, they didn't have any mess halls for us for that 3-day trip. And it was very interesting. We went to the town where they have Oberammergau. That was one of our stops, where every 10 years they have the pilgrimage play. And of course it was not, 45 was not one of the years to have it. But we went into the churches there, and they were very ornate and very beautiful and very interesting, that kind of information. Anyway, more colored pictures. And so then now back to the 2nd Armored Division on the way home. We stayed in Marseille for quite a few weeks. And I had in my possession, I think I paid $20 to a GI for a Army 45 pistol. And I had traded or something, and I had a German Luger, and I had a German P38, which was a type of pistol. So I had 3 pistols, and I had a carbine, which nobody knew I had in essence. So I didn't know how much of that I could bring home. So when we got to Marseille, I buried them under the barracks where we stayed. And we were there for several weeks because we had to wait for the ships to come into the harbor. And, you know, that's when I went to Nice and everything. And they had a great, big, huge, corrugated, if I said Quonset hut type thing, only huge. And it was called, I think, Dewdrop Inn or something like that. And they had movies all day long and all night long. You go there and just sit down on a bench and watch a movie as often as you wanted, you know. We just waited and waited and waited. Finally, in January, the victory ship MIT was the one we were going to go home on. And we loaded up, and I dug out my pistols and everything from under the barracks that I was staying in. But I chickened out. I left the carbine in the shower room. I thought, I'm never going to get this thing home, but I could, knowing how lax they were in coming into the States, I could have brought it home very easily. And I believe that here at the museum they paid $400 to have a carbine. So now this is January in the North Atlantic in a 400-foot long Victory ship. And the Victory ships were all named for colleges and universities, and so we were on the MIT Victory. And I don't remember much about it except that we left Marseille January 21st, 1946, and we arrived in New York on February 1st. So we were about 2 weeks in crossing over, and this is wintertime, and it's cold and rainy and everything. There wasn't anything to do on board ship because, you know, they're small, and in comparison to coming over on a great big huge liner, we practically had the whole division on one liner, you know. And this was just a, well, I don't know how many people were on it, but we filled up the holes. I couldn't even tell you how we slept or anything like that, but of course we had 3 meals a day, I'm sure, and came home, took pictures when we passed the Rock of Gibraltar. You know, we were in the Mediterranean at Marseille, went past the Rock of Gibraltar, out onto the ocean. Then I have pictures of entering New York Harbor, and the Statue of Liberty is about 1/8 of an inch high on my film. And then we entered the harbor, and they always had people waiting for you with bands and things of that sort. So we we then arrived in New York on February the 1st, and anybody that had been inducted into the Army at Fort Bliss, Fort MacArthur, which was my place in California, or fort up in Washington, we were flown back to our points of induction. Most of the men went by bus or by train. So we left New Jersey. We got on a DC-3, nothing inside of it except metal bucket seats along the walls and a great big stack of furniture, moving blankets, you know, real thick blankets. And we got on board and left the New Jersey airport at 7:30 one evening. And do you think I could get away from Texas? We landed in Dallas about midnight. They gave us a box lunch, and the plane, of course, refueled. Got back on the DC-3, or probably it was a C-47, being a Army type plane, and we landed in the Long Beach airport at 7:30 that next morning, and we were then sent over to Fort MacArthur, and I was discharged from the Army at Fort MacArthur in San Pedro on February the 11th, 1946. Now, if I had immediately gone up to Santa Barbara, I would have been about a week or two late for the spring semester, but I didn't. I stayed home. We were discharged with $300 discharge money, and so I stayed home, and I painted the folks' house, and they had, you would report to the Department of Employment every week, and if they didn't have anything for you, you received cash money. And it was, the GIs called it the 5220 Club. You only had 1 year's time that you could collect this $20 a week. So you would go to the employment office and say, you know, that you were available. And I can remember one time they sent me out on a job, and we went downtown and picked up some materials and put it on a truck and brought it back to Culver City, and the fellow was building a little building which is still on Washington Boulevard in Culver City. This is Culver City, you know, is really the movie film capital of the world, not Hollywood. And that's where MGM is, and Sony is now in MGM, and all of the big Hal Roach studios were there in Culver City and all that kind of stuff. So my dad worked at the Fox Studios, and then it became 20th Century Fox. And all of my friends' dads and moms worked in the studios mostly. So I just stayed home that springtime, bought a neighbor's car for $300 and tore it to pieces and took the dents out and painted it at Earl Shives for $25.95 for a paint job, and reupholstered the inside and changed the back end of it into a rumble seat and all of that kind of stuff. And then I took off and went up to Santa Barbara for summer '46. I just re-entered into the industrial education program that they had. And because I had gone to Texas A&M, I got approximately 30 credits from the work that I did. Most of it was from the first quarter, but they did, of course, they gave me all kinds of credit for physical education. Physical education before the war was a half a credit a semester, and you had to have 3 credits to graduate. Anyway, so then I had fall '46, spring of '47, and I still needed 2 more classes of summer of '47. But in fall of '46 and spring of '47, I had a very heavy load. I took about 18 or 19 units in both of those semesters to get enough credits, because all of the GIs that went back to college, we knew what we were doing. I just stepped right back into my program, and every one of the see, I was going to be a shop teacher. When I entered Santa Barbara, I wanted to be a industrial arts major. It was called industrial education for the major. And you took wood shop and electric shop and metal shop and welding and drafting and freehand drawing and all of that stuff, as well as we had 2 campuses at Santa Barbara. We had the old campus on the Riviera, where we took chemistry and science and physics and things of that. And originally, all of the shops were there. But in September '41, they opened up a brand new campus out on the Mesa, which is now Santa Barbara Junior College. And we had many of our industrial education classes out there. So we would leave the Riviera campus after we would have a class there, race across town to have a class at the Mesa campus, where the machine shop was located, and the beginning wood shop, and so on and so forth. Anyway, lots of fun. I graduated in June of '47, even though I had 2 more classes to take, audio visual and something else, I forget what. And but they only had 1 graduation a year. And we still go back once a year. I can go back to the Santa Barbara campus, on the Riviera campus, which is now some kind of a company, and we have a reunion. They have a buffet out there, and they always honor the 40th reunion of a certain class and the 50th reunion of a certain class. So I graduated in '47, got married in August 24th of '47, and started teaching school in the Los Angeles Unified School District in September of '47. So that's that's where I am at that time, and my wife and I just celebrated 54 years of marriage, August 24th, and I've been retired from the school district for 20 years as of June. And I was a shop teacher for more or less 20 years in the Los Angeles School District in the metal shop area, although I taught wood shop and drafting and electric and print shop and others during that period of time. And then all during that time, I would go to summer school or to night school at the University of Southern California. I was a Trojan. So I've been a Gaucho from Santa Barbara. I've been an Aggie from Texas A&M, and I've been a Trojan from SC. And I received my master's degree at SC in, I graduated in '52, just doing night schools and summer schools. And then I continued on. You could earn more salary by earning, every time you got 14 credits above your bachelor's degree, you could pass into another salary area. So I graduated Santa Barbara with a minimum, 120. I graduated with a minimum for my master's of 30 degrees more, 30 units. And a unit in those days at SC was about $9. Wow. And it's about $300 or $400 today. And of course I went in on the GI Bill. And this is just an aside. My friend who was in the 17th Armored Division, he was from Connecticut. And he graduated from high school, and he wasn't planning on going to college, but he signed up for ASTP. He had 3 semesters of engineering, and when he came back from the war, he wanted to go back to college. And this is what happened with so many of the fellows. They got into the ASTP program, and then he went on and finished at Yale and had a wonderful career at Aetna Insurance back in Connecticut. He died a few years ago. But he was a prisoner of war from the Steinwald, Herlesheim area. He was a prisoner from then on. He lost 50 pounds in that experience. You know, they ate rotten potatoes and water and stuff like that. But he's the only one that I kept track of for all 50-some years that we were together. Stayed at his home back in Connecticut several times and so forth. So I earned my general secondary credential for teaching at when I graduated from Santa Barbara, I had a special credential to teach industrial education. So then I earned my general secondary credential during night school in summers. Then I went in to earn my secondary administrative credential and general administrative credential, which means you could even be an elementary school principal as well. So the last 14 years of my career in education, I was an assistant principal at a junior high school. I taught 6 different summers of summer school, 3 of which were at high schools. I never really wanted to go into the high school work because you kind of thought of the shops as almost a dumping ground. Mm-hmm. And in junior high school, you got everything. You got from the special training all the way up to the gifted. And the gifted were still in school in those days. They hadn't left as they have nowadays and gone to the private schools. So you had wonderful classes. I mean, you'd have some dumbbells, but you had great classes, and kids will see me on the street and they said, "Oh, didn't you used to teach at Mark Twain, Mark Twain Junior High?" Yes. I would look at them, and I could tell by their age whether they were Mark Twain in the shops or Marina Junior High School when I was a vice principal over there. So I had 14 years as assistant principal and a total of 34 years of teaching experience in administration.
Is there any message that you would want to leave for future generations that are going to look at this?
Well, I would just say that um, if your country calls you, you know, there's no reason to say that why should you not serve. I know that I served over 3 years, you know, in the Army, and because I'm sure that I would have finished my education otherwise, but it was so easy to enter the college program after the war, and we didn't get anything other than that really as a fringe benefit, but uh, I was I was told of the 12th Armored Division Association reunions back in as early as, well, 47, 48. But most of the men in the 12th Armored Division were from the Midwest and the East. And their early reunions were all on the West Coast in Chicago and places like that. And it would have cost me $150 to go to a reunion. And I was married and I had 2 children, and we didn't have that kind of money. My first job with the Board of Education, I got $2,830 a year for 10 years, and that was gross. You got 10 payments. You had no money coming in after June. You went to work in September for 5 weeks before your first check. That's pretty tough, 3.5 months or 4 months before you're in between there. And but anyway, hey, we made it, and we lived and raised a family of 4, 3 girls and 1 boy, and we had a great time. And for the future generations, the Army was, you know, I don't have any regrets of being in the Army. It was a good experience. Didn't really enjoy being dirty and cold and wet and muddy and all that, but hey, came through it, and that's the important thing, because a lot of people didn't. So just hang in there. And what else?
Is there anything else you want to add?
Well, let me just say this. I've been retired for 20 years. Enjoyed every bit of it. Still enjoying it. And I received a phone call, I'll just say maybe about 1990 or 1991. One Sunday afternoon, came home and got a phone call. Wanted to know if this was William Hahn that had been in the 12th Armored Division. I said yes. And he said, well, this is Weston Emery calling you. And I said, Weston L. Emery? Because he's the only, honestly, he's the only one I remember of C Company, because we did so many things after the war. I couldn't tell you what he and I did during the war, because well, not half of the time, but so much of the time I was not with the company. And when we were at Herlesheim, did I say this? I was with the colonel all day. If I'd been with a machine gun company, I probably wouldn't be here today. So the Lord was looking out for me.
Thank you very much.
Okay. With that. 1923 in Culver